10 years on the throne, Xie Yangjing proposed to depose the empress 10 times. The entire palace knows he hates me, hates that I took his rightful empress position and forced his beloved to her death. Yet when assassins attacked, it was he who shielded me from the fatal blow. That day he lay in a pool of blood, looking at me with weary eyes. Kui Yinzhuang, I have returned the life I owed you. I only wish that in the next life, you and I have nothing to do with each other. I never thought there would truly be a next life. I returned to the spring of my 17th year when the Empress Dowager asked me to choose a husband from among the princes at that time. Xie Yang was still the crown prince. Meeting his gaze, I slowly turned and handed the jade pendant to the person beside him. I, your subject's daughter, wished to marry the Qin prince. As soon as my words fell, the entire hall erupted in an uproar. After all, the Prince of Qin was not favored by the emperor and was frail and sickly. The surrounding whispers reached my ears. They said I must be insane, giving up the easily attainable position of crown princess to choose the Prince of Qin instead. The empress was stunned for a moment, then reminded me in a deep voice, marriage is no child's play. Yin Zhong should think it through clearly. I knew she had always favored me as the crown princess. It was only because my father had once saved the emperor's life, and the emperor had granted me the freedom to choose my own marriage, that she allowed me to make the selection. Before the banquet, the empress still held my hand and asked me what I thought of the crown prince at that time. I still admired Xie Yangjing, and before I could answer, my face flushed red. His Highness is naturally excellent. The empress understood and placed the jade disc in my palm. Then, during the banquet, Yinjing will give the jade disc to the crown prince. The rest, I will take care of for you. But this time, she will be disappointed. I gather my skirts and kneel before her. My heart is set, and I wish to marry Prince Qin. The surrounding noise grew even louder. Even the usually indifferent Xie Yangjing raised his eyes upon hearing this. His gaze lightly fell on me, and his brows, almost imperceptibly, furrowed too this time. The empress did not grant the marriage on the spot. She said that marriage is a significant matter and should be discussed with my parents first. This matter was hastily brushed aside, and the sound of strings and flutes resumed at the banquet. The noble lady who was close to me finally couldn't hold back and whispered in my ear, "What a great opportunity just now. Why didn't you choose the crown prince? Aren't you the one who has admired him for many years?" Peach blossoms half fallen, spring water slightly rippled, sunlight floating on the surface, making me feel dazed for a moment. In fact, in my past life, I chose him at that time. His expression was calm, and he indifferently accepted my jade disc. When the empress bestowed the marriage, I accepted the decree and expressed gratitude alongside him. Throughout the entire ceremony, the etiquette was impeccable, yet there was not a trace of joy, as if it were merely a routine matter. After marrying into the East Palace, I lived a quiet life for 3 years. Xie Yangjing was strictly disciplined from a young age, learning the principle that a crown prince must not indulge in romantic love, so he strictly controlled the time he spent in the backyard. He only shared a room with me twice a month, each time for no more than 2 hours. He would have 1 meal with me each day. If we had lunch together, we wouldn't eat together in the evening. My parents' relationship was not harmonious, so I didn't understand how a normal couple should interact. I once thought this was what they called mutual respect between husband and wife. I also believed that Xie Yangjing held affection for me. After all, in the intimacy of the bedchamber, he would shed his usual stern demeanor and gaze at me with a dazed expression. His hoarse voice would call out Yinzhong over and over again, but in the end, I overthought it. Only after Jiang Peiyu appeared did I realize he wasn't naturally indifferent. It turns out he also had a passionate heart and youthful spirit. 3. Xie Yangjing met Jiang Peiyu during his southern inspection tour. At that time, heavy rains in the south caused the river to swell, and he fell into the river, drifting downstream and accidentally entering a village. It was the peasant girl Jiang Peiyu who took him in. He stayed at the Jiang household for 10 days. I don't know what happened during that time, only that when he returned, he often gazed absent-mindedly at a plain hairpin. Later, during one of our intimate moments, he wrapped his arms around my waist, but the name that escaped his lips was not mine. It was Au. My body stiffened, and all desire for pleasure vanished. I asked him hoarsely, if your highness is so fond of Miss Jiang, why not bring her into the palace?" In the flickering lamplight, with the gauze curtains swaying, he leaned over me and whispered softly, "She doesn't want to be a concubine, but I am already married. Since I cannot give her the position of a principal wife, I will not force her." When mentioning her, Xie Yanzhao's words became unusually abundant. "Yin Zhong, she is different from other girls. She is lively and radiant, and she cooks exceptionally well. She can wield an axe with such vigor, so very impressive. She belongs to the free mountains and wilderness, and I cannot bear to confine her in the palace, making her a caged bird." That night, Xie Yangjing spoke passionately, staying with me the entire night. He also broke his usual restraint, ignoring my pleas, and took me for a full 2 hours. Yet he covered my eyes with a red cloth, his gaze distant, not looking at me, but at the person in the distance. I once thought that person would only be a distant name to me, but when Xie Yangjing ascended the throne, she appeared. Jiang Peiyu became a palace maid serving in the imperial garden. The moment he stood before Xie Yangjing, the usually calm and composed emperor swayed slightly. He wanted to say something, but after a long pause, he only asked one question: "Why is Miss Jiang here?" Jiang Peiyu did not answer immediately. Instead, she took out an old hairband from her sleeve. It was adorned with auspicious cloud patterns, an old item he used when he was still the crown prince. She held the hair ribbon in her hands, tears welling in her eyes. "I truly miss my beloved, so I dared to climb over the palace wall, just to steal a few glances at him." The April sunlight slanted gently onto her, not too intense, but warm and soothing. Xie Yanjing's fingertips suddenly clenched, his throat rolling repeatedly, releasing a very soft breath. His eyes were filled with the joy of something lost being found again. In that moment, I knew the true favored concubine of the harem was about to emerge. Indeed, on that very day, Xie Yangjing issued a decree, conferring the title of concubine upon Jiang Peiyu. The emperor, who had always adhered to propriety and law, for the first time disregarded the ancestral customs, elevating a palace maid to the rank of imperial concubine. For, since entering the palace, Lady Jiang has enjoyed unwavering favor. Xie Yangjing spends every night with her, causing resentment among the other imperial consorts. Even the Empress Dowager has expressed her disapproval of this matter, ordering me to advise the emperor. I mentioned the concept of sharing the emperor's favor equally to Xie Yangjing several times, and he finally took it to heart, summoning an imperial concubine, the Jiaoyi. But Jiang Peiyu held a grudge against me because of this. That night, instead of seeking out Xie Yangjing, she barged into my palace. She didn't even bother with proper etiquette, glaring at me with clenched teeth and a cold voice. "What do you mean by sharing the emperor's favor equally? Isn't it just that the empress can't bear to see me enjoying the emperor's exclusive favor? But it is I who truly shares a mutual affection with the emperor. No matter how noble your position as the empress may be, what use is it if you cannot keep the emperor's heart?" Xie Yangjing once told me that Jiang Peiyu has a pure and kind nature, and asked me to look after her more. So when she had a rift with the Empress Dowager, I mediated between them. She overstepped the rights and snatched my hair crown and golden hairpin, but I pretended not to know. Even on the night of the full moon, when she pretended to have a nightmare and called Xie Yangjing away from the central palace, I did not stop her. But this time, with all the palace servants present, she openly defied me like this. If I let her go again, the news of the central palace's incompetence would spread far and wide. By tomorrow, the night seeped into the palace walls, and I stood with my hands behind my back, glaring at her coldly, rebuking, "Lady Jiang, you have been disrespectful and have offended me. Kneel in the Changchun Palace until dawn before rising." I did not punish her with the rod, only with kneeling, which was already a leniency given to Xie Yanjing's sake. But I never expected that this kneeling would lead to trouble. 2 hours later, a pool of blood appeared beneath Jiang Peiyu. Her body went limp, and she collapsed into the blood. The imperial physician came to take her pulse and said she was pregnant, less than 2 months along. Because of this punishment of kneeling, she had a miscarriage. 5. I have never seen Xie Yangjing so furious. The disgust in his eyes was palpable as he looked at me. The empress has such deep schemes, tricking me into the concubine Zhao's palace. all to find fault with consort Jiang in my absence. I was once under the impression that the Empress was magnanimous and gentle. At that moment, Jiang Peiyu in his arms slowly regained consciousness. Her face showed no grief over the loss of her child. Instead, she curled her lips, her eyes filled with the triumph of a victor. In an instant, I was enlightened. So it turned out that she had deliberately provoked me last night, leading me to punish her. Then, using the life of the child in my womb, I would make Xie Yangjing grow suspicious of me. What a deep scheme indeed. Who said a country girl doesn't understand the dangers of the palace? She is clearly perfectly suited for this harem, I wanted to explain to Xie Yangjing, but he didn't want to listen. The human heart is naturally biased, and his heart is even more so, to the extreme. Although I had done nothing wrong, he punished me by halving my monthly allowance and ordered me to reflect on my actions in the Changchun Palace that day. As he carried Jiang Peiyu past me, he took 2 steps and suddenly stopped. He said, "The Empress is only concerned with power and does not understand love, so naturally, she cannot comprehend the depth of my feelings. For you, if this happens again in the future, I will depose the Empress." As he spoke, he lowered his head to tuck the stray hair behind Jiang Peiyu's ear. In his eyes was a surging love I had never seen before. I feel a bit dazed. How could I not understand love? Many years ago in spring, the capital was filled with blooming pear blossoms. I was returning home from an outing when I encountered a torrential downpour, and my carriage became stuck in the mud. It was he who held up an oil paper umbrella and escorted me back to the Kui residence. The April pear blossoms, dampened by the rain, fell upon the surface of his umbrella. One petal fell into his hair, making the young man's brows and eyes appear gentle and refined. My heartbeat suddenly skipped a beat. That one skip lasted for many years, until later, when basins of cold water poured over my head and woke me up. I spent several quiet days in the Changchun Palace before finally leaving for the ancestral temple ceremony. It so happened that on that day, there was a disturbance caused by refugees, and someone fired a cold arrow at Xie Yangjing. I saw it in that instant. My thoughts raced through 100 scenarios. At present, the border war is intense. If the emperor were to pass away, the court would be thrown into turmoil, and it would be the common people and soldiers who would suffer. So, I leaped forward to block that arrow for him. The arrowhead struck me in the back, and I lost a great deal of blood, collapsing into Xie Yangjing's arms. After 8 years of marriage, it was the first time I had ever seen him show such a panicked expression. He carried me back to the palace at full speed. I slowly took hold of his hand. "Your Majesty, I too understand the taste of love." That year at the gate of the Kui residence, when Your Majesty broke a pear blossom branch to give to me, I knew what it meant to be unable to control one's emotions. It's just that the emperor has no interest in me. Some emotion was surging wildly in his eyes. He held my hand back, calling out Yinzhong after a long time. "Yinzhong, I understand now. I'll be with you. Nothing will happen to you. This time, I bet right." I laid my true heart bare before him, and he forgave me for past grievances. He began to visit Changchun Palace frequently. No longer just twice a month. When he undressed me, he rolled my name over his tongue 1,000 times, rushing in with a bit of recklessness, and I slowly hugged him back. After he left, I propped my waist up with soft pillows. I no longer wanted to explore matters of love. All I knew was that, as the Empress, I needed to have an heir as soon as possible. But my luck was really bad. Heaven did not grant my wish after all. 6. Since I gained favor, Jiang Peiyu has made a scene many times. At first, Xie Yangjing would still coax her gently. Over time, I gradually grew less patient and visited her palace less frequently. Jiang Peiyu slowly settled down. However, every day when I paid my respects, I could always see a hint of resentment in her eyes. That year, my birthday celebration was quite a grand affair. Xie Yangjing presented all kinds of jewels and beautiful jade before me, ordering all titled ladies to enter the palace and pay their respects. He also set off fireworks throughout the night in Yujing. That night, resting in the Changchun Palace, he called for water 5 times and refused to extinguish the candles, saying he wanted to see his reflection in my eyes. The flickering candlelight cast our intertwined figures onto the window paper. The next morning after waking up, I heard from my maid that Lady Jiang wanted to see me. She also mentioned that Lady Jiang had stood outside the Changchun Palace the entire night. When I summoned her, dark circles were evident under her eyes. Unprecedentedly, she suddenly began reminiscing with me. She entered the palace back then because she was enamored with Xie Yangjing. It was also because Xie Yangjing had promised to give her all his love. Your Majesty the Empress, I come from a rural background. In my place, every household has one husband and one wife, and there are never any concubines. I am someone who cannot tolerate even a grain of sand in my eyes. If I cannot have all of someone's love, it's better not to have it at all. Now that you've taken some of my favor, you must be quite pleased with yourself, aren't you? She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a hatred as deep and venomous as poison. Do you believe, Your Highness, that I have a way to make the Emperor remember me for the rest of his life, and to ensure that you never receive his favor again? At the time, I paid her no mind, only thinking that I should be even more cautious in my actions from then on. But I never imagined that there would be no from then on anymore. After Jiang Peiyu left my palace, she hanged herself that very night. By the time she was discovered, she had already stopped breathing. Before her death, she left behind a suicide note. It contained only 10 words. The Empress has wronged me too deeply, driving me to my death. She died in the 4th year after entering the palace, the very year Xie Yangjing loved her most. Once a person dies, they become a bright moon hanging high in the sky, something the living can never compare to. When Xie Yangjing came looking for me, he was holding a sword in his hand. He said, I have treated you so well, why do you insist on making things difficult for you? He did not believe my innocence, no matter how I explained. Jiang Peiyu severed the little bit of affection Xie Yangjing had for me in a tragic way. That day, he almost killed me. The palace attendants struggled to hold him back, but he eventually dropped his sword and confined me in Changchun Palace. The winter was biting, and there wasn't even a single piece of charcoal in Changchun Palace, making it as cold as an ice cellar. I was experiencing pain in my lower abdomen and wanted to summon a royal physician to take my pulse, but Xie Yangjing forbade anyone from visiting. I suffered for 3 days, until the bedding was soaked with a patch of dark red. Only then did I realize that I had once been pregnant, but had lost the child. The pain of losing a child is truly unbearable enough that the pear blossoms of Yujing withered in my heart that year with Xie Yangjing. We had finally reached a point where we looked at each other with mutual disgust. He hates me for forcing his beloved to death, and I hate him for causing the death of my child. He repeatedly proposed to depose the Empress, yet for some reason, it never came to pass, and I sat alone in the Changchun Palace. Year after year, I had thought that he must be eager for me to die early, just as I hoped for his early demise. But later, during a palace banquet when an attack occurred, he risked his life to shield me from an arrow. His eyes held emotions I couldn't comprehend, his raised hand hovering mid-air before slowly lowering. He only said to me, the life I owed you from that year, I've repaid it, Queen Zhuang. I only wish that in the next life, you and I have nothing to do with each other. The person I loved for half my life and hated for half my life died right before my eyes. I closed my eyes deeply. When I opened them again, the pear blossoms in Yujing were in full bloom once more, and amidst the peach blossoms and willow greens, it was the perfect spring this time. I thought, I would just let him have his way, no more entanglement between us. After the banquet ended, I left the Empress's palace and was about to return to the Kui residence. A young eunuch came running urgently, bowing to me. Miss Kui, His Highness requests your presence. I recognize him. He's the eunuch by Xie Yangjing's side. 7. I don't know why Xie Yangjing would suddenly seek me out. A pear branch stretched out obliquely, and he stood in the palace lane, leaving me with no way to avoid him. I could only respectfully bow to him. He lowered his eyes, his gaze falling upon me as if scrutinizing. After a long silence, he finally spoke. I had thought, Miss Kui, that you would choose me. I was slightly taken aback. In this life, our interactions have been few. I only learned that he liked inkstones, so I once gave him a Duan inkstone under the guise of my brother's name. Upon hearing that he injured his leg while riding and shooting, I begged my brother to take me along to visit him. My affection has always been expressed in a subtle way. I took a step back, staring at the fallen petals on the ground, and whispered softly, Your Highness possesses a celestial grace, and I dare not harbor any presumptuous thoughts." He fell silent again, his brows slightly furrowed, lips pressed into a tight line. The air around him grew still and heavy. Xie Yangjing was a restrained man, rarely revealing his emotions, having been his wife in a past life. I knew this was a sign of his displeasure. After a moment, he whispered softly, "Didn't Miss Kui like me before? Since you liked me, why did your feelings change?" How could he possibly know my original intentions at this moment? In that instant, my thoughts raced, and I almost thought he had been reborn too. How could that be? In his previous life, his greatest wish was to have nothing to do with me. If he had memories of his past life, he wouldn't be here looking for me now. Seeing that I didn't respond, he took out that small ink slab from his arms. "I know, this is what you have given to me at the poetry gathering last year. You glanced at me several times, not just the poetry gathering, but also the tea banquet, the elegant gathering. You always quietly gaze at me, then hurriedly avert your eyes when I look at you." The spring breeze swept through the deep palace, the willow color reflecting the vermilion palace walls. He stood amidst a courtyard of falling blossoms, enveloped in a faint, cold melancholy. "You need not pretend you dare not aspire, Miss Kui. I am no fool. So, why then, it turns out the love I thought I had concealed so subtly was actually quite obvious. Even if not spoken, it will be revealed through the eyes." Blossoms press heavily on the branches, white covers the jade steps, and I bow deeply to him. "In my youth, I was inexperienced, and I embarrassed your Highness. Now I understand the distinction between high and low, and I regard your Highness only as the crown prince." He stood there in a daze upon hearing this, lost in thought. Occasionally, palace servants passed by on the palace path, unwilling to have any further entanglement with him. I quickly straightened my sleeves and bid farewell. I returned to the Kui residence, which I had long missed. My father and brother were still at the government office, and my mother was not at home. I heard she had just been summoned to the palace by the Empress. I returned to my boudoir and sat before the bronze mirror, gazing at my 17-year-old self. The spring light was just right, and the person in the bronze mirror had gentle, soft features, with a faint hint of youthful innocence. Still young, still able to start over, I lingered lazily in the warm spring sun, taking a little nap. Not long after, the steward invited me to the study. The red lacquered wooden door opened, and my parents and brother were all present. In my previous life, after I fell out of favor, I lived in the Changchun Palace for a long time and rarely saw them. Now, seeing them suddenly, my eyes couldn't help but well up. When Mother saw the Empress, she already knew what had happened at today's banquet. She told her father and brothers about it. I heard Mother ask me, "Why didn't Yinzhong choose the crown prince?" I knew they were all very pleased with Xie Yangjing. Father said that marrying the crown prince would make me the future empress, destined to rule over the nation. Mother said the crown prince was upright in character, disciplined, and respectful, and would make a good husband. My elder brother also spoke highly of the crown prince, praising his literary and military talents as exceptional. Each of them spoke at length, and in the end, they all looked at me with eager anticipation in their eyes. The daylight filtered through the diamond-patterned window, filling the room, and I only asked one question. If I say that after choosing the crown prince, the rest of my life will be filled with misfortune, would you still want me to marry him? 8. The room fell into a deep silence, and everyone grew still. After a moment of contemplation, my father said, "If that is the case, then you shall not marry. Being a model empress for the world is ultimately for others' eyes. What matters most is your own happiness." Mother gently stroked my long hair. "The Kui family is already prominent as a scholarly clan. There's no need to sell our daughter for honor." As for my elder brother, he stood up, smiling gently. "I've been trained in martial arts since childhood and am destined for the battlefield. I'll uphold the Kui family's prestige. So Yinzhong, just live as your heart desires." They didn't ask me for the reason. The sun was too bright, making it hard for me to open my eyes. I suddenly remembered my past life. In my past life, I had been deposed as queen 10 times. If it weren't for my father tirelessly supporting me in the previous dynasty and my elder brother fighting to the death on the frontier with his flesh and blood, given the overwhelming hatred Xie Yangjing had for me at the time, My position as empress would have been lost long ago. My family will always be my refuge. And my support. Even if you didn't want to marry the crown prince, you didn't have to choose the Prince of Qin. My father frowned and warned me. The Prince of Qin is frail. You should think carefully. I nodded because my mother politely declined the empress. I did not give the jade pendant as a gift, this lifetime. Xie Yangjing and I finally do not have to be bound together as husband and wife. Thinking of this, I breathed a sigh of relief. A little over 10 days later, the eldest princess hosted a spring horse polo event, and I attended with my brother. I remember in my previous life, Xie Yangjing did not appear at the horse polo event. He has always been busy with government affairs and has little interest in such recreational activities. But this time, halfway through the race, I actually saw him sitting in the spectator seats, dressed in a moon-white robe, his back straight as a pine tree. He stood out from the bustling crowd. He lowered his gaze, his eyes calmly falling upon me. From across the crowd, I quickly glanced away and continued to coordinate with my elder brother. Galloping swiftly, I leaned low over the saddle, and with a sharp swing of the long staff, I hit the polo ball into the opponent's goal. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, my elder brother and I once again claimed the top prize. The gaze of the person behind me remained fixed on me, but I did not turn around, pretending not to notice. Not long after, a scolding voice suddenly came from that side. An eunuch was pouring tea for Xie Yangjing, but the tea was too hot, and a few drops spilled due to a trembling hand. Xie Yangjing was always composed, and such minor incidents would never bother him, but today, for some reason, he actually reprimanded the eunuch, who was so frightened that he begged for mercy in a panic. I still couldn't help but glance in that direction. He bent his index finger, lightly pressing the pad against the table, tapping intermittently as if feeling irritated. The crowd surged, quickly blocking my view. I went alone to the lakeside pavilion to enjoy the spring scenery. Distant mountains veiled in mist, the calm lake like a mirror, 10 miles of willow trees hanging over the rippling water. It was a beautiful scene, but someone's presence spoiled my mood. I don't know why Xie Yangjing is here. Spring rains often, and the light rain begins to drizzle. He folded his umbrella after entering the waterside pavilion. Congratulations to Miss Kui on winning the championship today. I shall grant Miss Kui a reward. What would you like, Miss Kui? 9. This was not the first time Xie Yangjing had asked me what I wanted. In the second year after our marriage in my previous life, during my birthday banquet, he asked, "What gift would the crown princess like? I already have everything: wealth, power, and a marriage envied by others, but there is something I truly desire." I asked him cautiously, "Will your highness be able to stay with me more often in the future? 5 times a month? 4 times? Even 3 times would be fine." The night breeze was cool and tranquil. He lowered his eyes, calmly gazing at me, his expression unwavering. "I am the crown prince and should not indulge in romantic affections. The crown princess is virtuous. I believe she can understand this principle." Having said this much, I could only remain silent. That year on my birthday banquet, he gave me many pieces of jewelry. Afterwards, he still only came to rest at my place on the 1st and 15th of each month, so infrequently that I couldn't even conceive a child. At this moment, the rain was still falling, and the world was so quiet that only the soft sound of the drizzle could be heard. I shook my head. "I have no desires for your highness." His fingertips gently twisted the hem of his clothes as he asked again, "What if I insist that you make one?" I thought about it. "Then I pray for the nation's prosperity and the people's peace, and for the mountains and rivers to remain forever strong." Xie Yangjing seemed to let out a soft chuckle, then took out a coiled lotus-patterned jade pendant from his sleeve. "This is for Miss Kui." I don't want to accept his gift, but after placing the jade pendant down, he turned and left in a huff. It seems he was hiding his anger again, so angry that he didn't notice the sudden rain, and I didn't have an umbrella that day. The waterside pavilion was bustling with people. No sooner had the crown prince left than the Prince of Qin arrived. Even in the spring, he was still wrapped in a thick cloak, and he picked up the jade pendant left by Xie Yangjing. "Since Miss Kui doesn't wish to accept it, I'll return it to my elder brother on your behalf." He tucked the jade pendant into his robe, tilting his umbrella so that most of it sheltered me from above. "Thank you, Miss Kui." for gifting me the jade pendant at the banquet that day. However, Miss Kui should not have chosen me. I appreciate your kindness, but I must return this jade pendant to you." I did not take it back. Instead, I looked up and asked him, "Why shouldn't you have chosen me? Since childhood, I have been frail and sickly, destined for an early death. I am not a suitable match for you, Miss Kui." I remember that at the spring banquet, when I chose him, he was initially surprised. After the surprise, he slightly curved the corners of his mouth, and a faint joy floated at the corners of his eyes and brows. This joy was fleeting, and moments later, he tightened his cloak, lowering his eyes and remaining silent. I smiled and asked him in return, "But isn't the prince fond of me? Since you like me, are you really going to push me away, watching me marry someone else in the future?" 10. Unexpectedly, my straightforwardness left the King of Qin momentarily stunned. In fact, in my previous life, it wasn't until many years later that I learned of his affection for me. At that time, I had already broken off with Xie Yangjing and was living in seclusion in the Changchun Palace. Others knew the emperor disliked me, and they avoided me at all costs. Only Xie Chen, every time he entered the palace, would always come to Changchun Palace to pay his respects. Even when I avoided him, he would still bow and offer greetings from behind the red lacquered palace gates. That winter, the silver charcoal for Changchun Palace was fetched by him. Later, when my elder brother was severely wounded on the frontier, it was he who drove all the way to the northern deserts to treat his injuries. There is no need to say it, I know his feelings, but I am his imperial sister-in-law, destined for no outcome. Physicians cannot heal themselves. Xie Chen passed away in the 8th year of Qinghe. Before his death, he dragged his sick body to the palace to see me. I once said he looked good in maroon, so that day he wore a maroon robe. Other than that, it was just the usual kowtow and greetings. The magnolias in the courtyard were in full bloom, white flowers like snow, with the fragrance wafting in the breeze. It made his back look tall and upright, yet excessively lonely. I thought for a moment and called out to him. I didn't make a sound, just mouthed the question to him. Next life, he understood, and was slightly startled. A moment later, she curved her eyes into a smile, more radiant than the full bloom of flowers. Okay, and now, with the slanting rain dampening his clothes, his thoughts were pierced by me, and his cheeks flushed slightly. He did not deny my words, only took a step back and repeated, "I am destined to die young, truly not a good match." I did not press him, saying to him, "I have heard that soon the emperor will select consorts for the various princes. Although I will not participate at that time, if your highness mentions me and the emperor asks for my opinion, I will nod in agreement. I am giving your highness only this one chance. How you proceed will be up to you." In my previous life, at that consort selection banquet, he declined on the grounds of his frail health. For many years thereafter, he remained alone. Now that I have taken several steps towards him, it's up to him to make his choice. The jade steps are wet, and he remains silent, gifting me the umbrella at the moment of parting. The eldest princess said that the spring rain falling in the garden has a unique charm, insisting on taking us to the imperial garden to enjoy the rain. Just as the eunuch from the imperial household department was leading a batch of new palace maids this year. From afar, I thought I saw a familiar figure. I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks, but that person's profile was strikingly similar to someone from my memory. I hurried over with my umbrella. The eunuch from the imperial household department bowed to me and, noticing that I had been staring at the second palace maid in the back row, introduced her to me. "This is a newly arrived palace maid, assigned to serve in the Eastern Palace. Her name is Jiang Peiyu. Does Miss Kui know her?" I looked up in astonishment. Jiang Peiyu, who should have been in the south, unexpectedly entered the palace at this moment. It was a full 5 years earlier than in her previous life. She looked at me, a faint smile curling at the corner of her lips. "It seems Miss Kui still remembers me." 11. Jiang Peiyu said she wanted to exchange a few words with me. The eunuch simply did her a favor and gave her the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Behind the rockery in the imperial garden, she lowered her head to examine her pink palace attire. In my previous life, when I reunited with him in the imperial garden, I was wearing this very dress. Back then, he truly cherished me like a precious gem. The reason he and I ended up in an irreparable situation is ultimately because of you. She looked at me, and even after a lifetime, the hatred in her eyes remained undiminished. Back then, you seized the opportunity, took every advantage, and snatched the position of his lawful wife. But this time, I came to find him early. I will become his wife before you, stand by his side as an equal, and stay with him forever. When mentioning Xie Yangjing, her gaze softened, but she was being too naive. Even if Xie Yangjing still loved her, a ruler's affection could never be wholehearted. If not me, there would be other concubines vying for his favor. I don't know if your decision not to choose him that day was a tactic of playing hard to get, but she was about to say more, but I cut her off. I won't compete with you, so you can rest assured. I'm tired, you may leave. She returned to the ranks of the palace maids, about to head to the Eastern Palace to meet the man she had loved for 2 lifetimes. I harbored resentment towards her, hating her for once framing me with her life. Therefore, I had someone keep an eye on the situation at the Eastern Palace. Xie Yangjing was still as busy as ever with government affairs. Jiang Peiyu was sweeping the courtyard, and they had met several times before. However, the fleeting glance and deep affection she had imagined never materialized. Xie Yangjing glanced at her, his expression indifferent, treating her as just another ordinary person. After several such encounters, she began to feel anxious. In a moment of haste, she swapped duties with someone else and ended up dressing the prince. While dressing him, she took the initiative to embrace him and pour out her heart. But what awaited her was not mutual affection, but the prince's thunderous anger. Xie Yangjiao pulled away in disgust, ordering her to receive 30 cane strokes and be sent to the laundry bureau for hard labor. Jiang Peiyu's luck was truly remarkable. The highly favored concubine Zhao accidentally fell into the lake by the laundry department. Skilled in swimming, she jumped into the lake and saved concubine Zhao. The emperor, grateful for her saving the royal consort, personally summoned her and offered to fulfill one wish of hers. Jiang Peiyu knelt before the imperial carriage. She said she wanted to marry the crown prince. 12. The position of crown princess not only valued appearance and talent, but also placed greater emphasis on family background. Naturally, the emperor would not agree, but under the influence of the consort Zhao's whispers, he betrothed Jiang Peiyu to the crown prince as a Liang Yuan. After all the twists and turns, she still ended up as a concubine, but unlike in her previous life, this time she was forced upon Xie Yangjing. Xie Yangjing merely glanced at her with disgust before placing her in the most remote courtyard. She held the title of Liang Yuan in name only, but they never shared a bed. She was struggling in pain, and I was enjoying my freedom. Taking advantage of the beautiful spring scenery, I invited a few playmates to go on an outing and enjoy the greenery. With fragrant meadows spread across the ground and willow branches hanging over the banks, we brought pastries for a picnic. I just didn't expect to run into Xie Chen here. He stepped forward and greeted each of us in turn. I gave a slight nod, politely returned the greeting, and then took my seat. I didn't exchange more than a few words with him. Truth be told, I didn't know what to say in front of him, thinking it best to wait and see his decision after the consort selection banquet before taking any action. Just as my friend brought her 4th brother along, her 4th brother was very talkative, always having endless things to say. As soon as he saw me, he came up to strike up a conversation. Xie Chen stood still in front, lowering his head to gaze at us. Seeing that I was a bit thirsty, 4th brother was quick-witted and immediately brought over a jade cup. Over there, Xie Chen's brows furrowed. The weather was uncooperative, and the sky quickly darkened as heavy rain was imminent. Everyone hurriedly boarded their carriages and returned home. It's just that the Kui residence is a long way off, and before we could get home, a sudden downpour arrived. This carriage of the Kui family is truly no good. Every time it rains, it inevitably gets stuck deep in the mud. No matter how hard the coachman drives, the horses simply cannot move an inch. The carriage of the Qin prince's residence maintained a steady distance behind, stopping as it saw the situation. In the flashes of lightning and claps of thunder, someone approached through the rain, holding a purple bamboo umbrella. Miss Kui, if you don't mind, you can take my carriage back to your residence. I lifted the carriage curtain to see Xie Chen standing by the window, his bangs already soaked by the rain. I shook my head. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness, but it's not necessary. I have nothing to do today and am in no hurry to return to the mansion, so I'll just take shelter from the rain in this carriage." Xie Chen was met with a closed door, yet he remained standing in place. Refusing to leave, the heavy rain fell chaotically, soaking his clothes. He curved his lips, a hint of helpless amusement spreading in his eyes. "That was because I wanted to escort Miss Kui back home. Please, Miss Kui, do me this favor and grant my wish." I looked at him through the rain and mist, his brow slightly furrowed, his tone growing even softer. "To be honest with Miss Kui, I was overwhelmed with jealousy today. I had thought that as a defeated man, I was unworthy of Miss Kui. But your words that day gave me a glimmer of hope." The eaves of the carriage extend a few feet, just enough to provide some shelter from the rain. I leaned out halfway, reached out, and grabbed Xie Chen's sleeve, pulling him under the eaves. I didn't let go, and he took the opportunity to lean forward. "Xie today really wishes to pull that young master away from Miss Kui's side. The thought is absurd, truly improper, but it's also truly hard to resist, Miss Kui." I seemed to be speaking incoherently. I smiled softly at him, and he leaned against the carriage eaves, laughing quietly. "Actually, I just wanted to say that I have long admired Miss Kui." The pear blossoms, crushed by the sudden rain, fell like remnants of snow onto my hair. I asked him, "And then, what do you plan to do at the selection banquet, Your Highness?" He reached out to brush away the fallen petals for me. "I can't wait for the selection banquet. Tomorrow, I will enter the palace to request a betrothal. So, Miss Kui, may I have the honor of escorting you back?" I boarded the carriage of the Qin prince's residence. The torrential rain had just subsided, and a sudden burst of sunlight pierced through. The carriage rumbled forward and stopped at the Kui residence before entering the mansion. He confirmed with me once more. "So it's settled then?" Truly, not regretting it, I understood his concerns. He fears that he may die early, leaving me alone in sorrow. He worries that if I were to remarry, it would be difficult for me to find another match. But there is no need to worry about all these things. Life is short, so one should enjoy it while they can. Marriage is not something to dwell on. I nod. No regrets. After exchanging a smile, we were about to return to the mansion when we saw Xie Yangjing emerge from Wui Lane. He asks me in a deep voice, "What is it that you do not regret?" I heard that the crown prince has been leaving the palace recently and often passes by the Kui residence. I originally thought it was just gossip, but it turns out to be true. I greeted him with courtesy. "It's about my marriage to the prince, and I do not regret it." 13 Xie Yangjing suddenly stiffened, his eyes filled with unexpected disbelief. A moment later, he confirmed with me, "You said you want to marry my brother?" "Yes." He slowly pursed his lips, his gaze darkening for a moment. "Why?" I smiled and said, "And why else? Naturally, it's because your subject and the prince share mutual affection." His expression was complicated. He opened his mouth, and after a long pause, he spoke hoarsely with difficulty. "But what if I were to tell you that I, too, have feelings for you?" Before he could finish, my father and brothers emerged from the residence, bowing to the crown prince and the Prince of Qin. Xie Yangjing's words trailed off without further elaboration. In front of his ministers, he always maintained the dignified and composed demeanor befitting a crown prince. With a faint nod, he departed without even entering the mansion gates. After drinking a cup of tea, Xie Chen also took his leave and departed. He said he couldn't wait until tomorrow. To avoid complications, he would go to the palace to see the emperor today. So, that very day, the empress summoned me into the palace. As dusk fell, the curtains were drawn deep. The empress sat upright at the head of the hall and said to me, "Yinzhong is a daughter of a noble family, and she must plan for the family's future. If you seek power, you should choose the crown prince." I knelt before her. "I do not seek power. My father and brothers only wish for my happiness." "Then if you seek love, you should also choose the crown prince. You once told me that you were in love with the crown prince." Someone seems to be standing behind the gauze curtain, posture straight. I stared at that figure and softly said, "I did indeed admire him in the past, but now I've put those thoughts to rest." "Why, Your Highness has no feelings for me. There's no need to force a marriage." The empress asked me again, "What if he has feelings for you now?" I have seen how Xie Yangjing loves someone. It is grand and passionate, whether in my past life or now. his feelings for me have always been too faint now, it's just the torment of unfulfilled desire. I, your humble daughter, only wish to marry the Prince of Qin." Upon hearing this, the Empress let out a soft, melancholic sigh. Within the hall, the eaglewood incense burned gently, its smoke curling and lingering in the air. A soft sigh fell, particularly clear in the empty silence. She said, "Crown Prince, your mother has done all she can, her mind is made up, and even her mother cannot sway her." Someone slowly emerged from behind the curtain. Xie Yanjing's jaw tightened, and his brows furrowed with a hint of bitterness. Yet, despite his reluctance, he could only watch helplessly as the imperial decree of betrothal was announced. He returned to the Eastern Palace in disappointment, where Jiang Peiyu greeted him. Upon hearing that Jiang Peiyu wanted to add clothes for him, he brushed her aside. The affection from their past life no longer existed. All that remained in his eyes for her was impatience. Xie Yangjing was not one to indulge in drinking, but that night, he got drunk. I don't know what he was shouting in his sleep. I only know that Jiang Peiyu made a huge fuss, demanding love in vain. When her lover suddenly stopped loving her, she couldn't accept the change. Clearly, the problem was with Xie Yangjing. Yet she came to hate me. In her eyes, it seemed that only love mattered. After being coldly treated by Xie Yangjing once again, she returned to her room. She left a note, hung a white silk cord, and hanged herself. She wanted to replicate the same method, hoping her death would make Xie Yangjing remember her for a lifetime. "She still hates me and doesn't want to let me go." The content of that note was very familiar, only this time the address had changed. "Queenzong has bullied me too much, driving me to my death." 14. The note was discovered by the palace servants and spread around. She thought that, just like in her previous life, a single note could plunge me into an abyss of endless suffering, but this time was different. The Crown Prince had no interest in her. I had no significant connection with her either. A simple investigation would reveal this to be a blatant frame-up. As for why she would set me up, opinions vary. Some say she is a peasant girl, envious of my noble background. Others say she is alone in the world, jealous of my loving family. Some say she was infatuated with the Crown Prince, but since the Crown Prince favored me, she harbored resentment. But regardless of which version is true, I remain innocent, and Jiang Peiyu's immoral conduct earned her public disdain. Unlike her grand funeral in a previous life, her body was wrapped in a simple straw mat. After hearing about the discovery of the note, Xie Yangjing was stunned for a long time. It wasn't sadness, but confusion. He locked himself in his room for 3 days. When he emerged, he paid no attention to the piles of documents on his desk, nor did he care about the pouring rain. He arrived at the gate of the Kui residence, asking to see me. When I stepped out holding an umbrella, his clothes were soaked through, and he looked disheveled. Raising his eyes to look at me, the corners of his eyes were deeply red, and his lips trembled slightly. He said, "So, back then when Jiang Peiyu hanged herself, it had nothing to do with you, right? She wanted her death to drive a wedge between you and me, but I fell for it, hating you for so many years. Just like this time, it was all her own doing from start to finish, wasn't it?" I was dazed for a while before realizing that he had remembered his past life. I nodded. "Yes, she used 2 lives to drive a wedge between you and me. Once it was the child in her womb that made you resent me. The other time, it was her own life that made us look at each other with mutual disgust." 15. The ways of the world are often absurd. Jiang Peiyu's suicide this time, by a stroke of luck, inadvertently proved my innocence from my previous life. The moonlight is melting, the heavy rain pours down, and Xie Yangjing asks me in a hoarse voice, "Yinzhong, this time there is no Jiang Peiyu. Shall we be the emperor and empress in perfect harmony?" I looked at him calmly. "Didn't we agree that in the next life, we would owe each other nothing?" Raindrops slid down his face, as if he were shedding tears. He said, "But I regret it now. I cannot do it. Your Highness does not truly like me now. It is merely selfishness and an unyielding obsession." He clutched at my sleeve, his thin lips curving into a pale smile. "What if I said that I have always liked you? I have liked you since my previous life." Xie Yangjing said that he had noticed my affection before we got married, but as the Crown Prince, too many people deliberately approached him with genuine feelings often mixed with ulterior motives. He thought I was the same, that what I admired was his status. He didn't want to fall into that trap, so after we got married, he always strictly limited the number of times he came to see me. Later, when he went south and met Jiang Peiyu, she saved him without knowing his identity for the first time. Someone offered him a sincere heart, not because of his position as the crown prince, but simply because he was himself. Jiang Peiyu had no powerful maternal family behind her, she was all alone, so he could rest assured. So, he thought, if emotions must have a place to rest, then let them rest on Jiang Peiyu. But I always find myself wanting to see you, in front of you. I seem to lose control so easily. This made him uneasy and anxious. When he learned that the palace servants said I had caused Jiang Peiyu to miscarry, his first reaction was not sadness, but relief. I have been married to him for many years, never making a mistake, and now that I have finally done something wrong, he keeps telling himself that I am not that good after all. So, do not let your heart be moved. He punished me without hesitation, as if to prove that he truly did not have his heart moved, until the day of the sacrifice. You flew forward to shield me from an arrow. The moment you fell into my arms, I knew I could no longer control myself. I cannot do as my father said and abstain from emotions, guarding my heart, and so followed the subsequent favor. Later, Jiang Peiyu hanged herself, and he broke with me. I hated deeply and several times proposed to depose the empress, but I never truly intended to do so. That day when I saved you, there was no time to weigh the pros and cons. It was purely instinctive. The rain kept falling, and he spoke a lot, and I listened a lot. Listening made me feel weary. If your highness is done, please return. He was taken aback, a faint glimmer of emotion stirring in his eyes. Then a shallow puddle on the ground reflected his silhouette quietly in a trance. It seems like I've returned to that year. With sudden rain filling the sky and pear blossoms covering my shoulders, a drop of rain shatters into a puddle, and the reflection instantly disperses. That year's girlish thoughts have all fallen away. I hold an umbrella and turn to leave. Your highness, the past is gone. Do not cling to what has flowed away. I am not a particularly kind-hearted person. In noble families, there are no women of absolute purity and goodness. I once hated him to the core, almost wishing him dead. Later, he saved my life. At the moment he breathed his last in front of me, I suddenly thought, let it be. If there is a next life, it would be better if we were strangers. As for Jiang Peiyu, I also harbor hatred. I never intended for her to live. I know, Xie Yangjing is a suspicious person. Love requires the right time, place, and harmony. She appeared before him so urgently, even resorting to imperial authority to force him into marriage. He must have been suspicious. Xie Yangjing would not fall in love with a woman who throws herself at him, and what she seeks is doomed to be in vain. Therefore, either she will be executed by Xie Yangjing in the future, or she will hang herself in deep resentment and agony. This is her fate, and I, watching her step by step into a dead end, fully aware. 16 My wedding date with King Qin has been set. It is set for late spring and early summer. It was originally a good thing. But Xie Yangjing went to see the emperor after hearing the news. No one knows what was said, only that the emperor was furious. He was always gentle and kind, but that day he swept all the documents off the desk to the ground. Did I feed the Confucian classics I told you to read into a dog's stomach? Do you even know what you're saying? That's your sister-in-law. Do you want to take your brother's wife for yourself? In a fit of anger, the emperor threw the inkstone at Xie Yangjing's forehead. Instantly, blood flowed profusely. The crown prince was confined in the eastern palace. Even the empress's pleas for him were in vain. Seeing this, the other ambitious princes began to stir, courting influential nobles. Xie Yangzhao finally calmed down. In his previous life, he was not a good husband, but he was a good emperor. Since ascending the throne, he has eliminated current malpractices, reduced taxes, expelled the northern barbarians, and vigorously promoted the imperial examination system. Because he touched the interests of the powerful aristocratic families, he was repeatedly assassinated. After all, having been strictly trained as the crown prince since childhood, his political insight and vision were indeed superior to those of the other princes. After being released from the Eastern Palace, he quickly retaliated against those brothers who had attempted to replace him. He was busy with his political affairs, and I was busy with my wedding. When Xie Chen and I got married, pomegranate flowers blazed like fire, and trumpet vines clung to the walls. The red candles flickered, casting a soft glow on our joyful eyes. Someone interrupted my wedding night. It was the eunuch from Xie Yanjing's side. He held a red lacquer tray, on which rested a seal engraved with everlasting joy. His Highness said that since others have already spoken the auspicious words of a harmonious marriage, he will not repeat them. He wishes you and the prince peace and happiness. Xie Chen's gaze fell on the seal, and he let out a soft, mocking laugh. Please convey my thanks to His Majesty on my behalf. Today marks the wedding day of this prince and his consort, so we will not detain you any longer. Eunuch, he calmly sent the person away, casually tossing the seal aside. The curtain fell, and he moved in close. No restraint, only indulgence. Yet it fulfilled my youthful dreams of a wedding night. 17 years later, Xie Yangjing ascended the throne. My elder brother, as usual, went to the battlefield this time. I carefully instructed him on many things and had Xie Chen pack him with plenty of ointments. Xie Yangjing never took a wife, and the position of empress remained vacant. I heard he often goes to Changchun Palace at night, sitting there all night long. There are rumors that he favors me, which is why he refuses to establish an empress. Upon hearing this, I just smiled, packed my bags, and headed south with Xie Chen. In my previous life, trapped deep in the palace, I never had the chance to see the magnificent landscapes of the world. Now I only wish to turn the verses I read in childhood into the paths I walk today. We have traveled to the Gobi Desert in the far north and witnessed the misty rain of the Jiangnan region. We watched the tides rise by the vast sea and slept beneath the stars at the foot of the Tsangshan Mountains. Xie Chen and I also have a child. It's a boy, born like me, but with his personality this time. Xie Chen lived longer than in his previous life. He said he had no attachment to the world anymore, but now, he wants to live longer, to spend more time with me and our child. When the child was 8 years old, his old illness worsened, and his body grew increasingly frail. During the day, when he coughed, his handkerchief showed traces of blood. Fearing I would worry, he quietly hid it away, but in the end, he could not defy fate. That day, Xie Chen and I were enjoying the spring scenery in Mingju. A pear tree stood by the water, its branches stretching out over the surface, heavy with snow. We sat beneath the pear tree, the warm spring sunlight enveloping us. He spoke to me of the past, telling me how, many years ago, I had burst into his view in a fluttering red dress, and he had never forgotten. On the day of our wedding, he was so afraid of any unforeseen changes that he was extremely nervous. He also said that to this day, his long-held wish had been fulfilled, leaving no regrets. Yinzhong, my life has truly been very, very good. By the end, he gently leaned on my shoulder. He slowly closed his eyes, as if falling asleep. A petal of pear blossom fell upon his hair. He did not brush it away. He never opened his eyes again. 18 I sent Xie Chen back to Yujing for burial. After returning to the capital, I learned that Xie Yangjing had been ill for a long time. The imperial physician diagnosed him many times, saying he had a heart condition. There is no cure for a troubled heart, and I fear his time is running out. After the burial of Xie Chen, Xie Yangjong summoned me. Time had left too many marks on him. The once young man now bore the weight of years. He sat on his sickbed, his voice hoarse as he asked me, "Does Yinzhong wish to be an empress dowager?" He had no children of his own, and his ministers advised him to adopt a child from a collateral branch to be established as the crown prince. I understood the meaning behind his question. With the curtains drawn deep, I smiled faintly. "Your Majesty may leave a will." He looked at me, momentarily lost, his gaze growing distant. "Yinzhong remains unchanged, yet I have aged greatly. Do you still hate me?" My eyes held only a calm stillness. "In this life, we have had little interaction, so there is no talk of love or hatred." He was taken aback, then smiled bitterly. After a long pause, "I understand, I cannot do much else, but I will do my best to hand over a peaceful and prosperous country to your child." In the 12th year of Qinghe, Xie Yangjing passed away. Historical records describe him as diligent and hardworking, rising early and retiring late, eventually dying at his desk. Before his death, he left a will, designating the son of the Princess of Qin as his successor. Mist and fog play in the sunlight, The courtyard filled with east wind, and I return to the deep palace once again. The rest of your life will be filled with beautiful moments. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My legitimate sister and I were married on the same day. She married into the household of the Marquis of Yongan, while I was wed to a lowly city guard. Unexpectedly, the young Marquis was later diagnosed with oligospermia, and my sister, unable to conceive for years, became the laughingstock of the capital. Meanwhile, the city guard repeatedly distinguished himself in battle, was promoted to the rank of general, and together we had 5 sons and 2 daughters, earning an imperial plaque inscribed with the words, "May your descendants flourish." My legitimate elder sister, consumed by jealousy, poisoned me on the day I was granted the title of a noble lady. When I opened my eyes again, we had both returned to the day of our betrothal. This time, my elder sister was the first to choose the city guard soldier. That very night, the young Marquis also rushed to break off our engagement, saying, "I don't want to ruin your life for no reason. The truth is, I cannot, you can't have children, is that it?" I grabbed his arm tightly. "I'll marry you. I'll marry no one but you. My mother-in-law is wealthy and generous, my father-in-law is influential and open-minded, and my husband is charming, handsome, in the prime of his life, and he can't have children. LMAO, how could my noble-born sister not covet such overwhelming fortune? When my elder sister chose the city guard first, I knew she had also been reborn," she said arrogantly. "This time, the blessings of 5 sons and 2 daughters and the imperial plaque of abundant offspring will all be mine." I couldn't suppress the smile at the corners of my mouth. "They're all yours, they're all yours," she sneered. "You and your handsome but useless young Marquis can become the laughingstock of the entire capital together." I lowered my head and said meekly, "How could I have the good fortune of my elder sister? It's only right that I'm mocked for not being able to bear a son." After saying that, I covered my face and pretended to sob as I ran out of the room. If I didn't run, my bell-like laughter would have been impossible to hold back. "Oh, my foolish elder sister, you don't want this leisurely and prosperous life, yet you insist on having those troublesome 5 sons and 2 daughters. You seek that so-called blessing of abundant offspring, then you can go through 10 pregnancies in 10 years for me, miscarriages, premature births, stillbirths, difficult labor, and the aftermath, age spots, stretch marks, hair loss, hemorrhoids, epilepsy, convulsions, mastitis, incontinence, dizziness, bone pain, bleeding, and tearing of the lower body." I leisurely returned to the side courtyard. Too overjoyed to sit still, I paced around the courtyard, making plans for this carefree life ahead. Where to go in the future? In spring, we must go for an outing to the West Embankment and invite Sister Liu. In summer, we must go boating to admire the lotus flowers and bring along Sister Yang. In autumn, we must drink wine and appreciate the chrysanthemums. All my girlfriends are wine enthusiasts, so we should start brewing some chrysanthemum wine now to have it ready in winter. I heard that the South is like spring all year round, and I've long wanted to go south to see it. By the way, in my free time, I also want to learn how to play polo. I haven't tried Chuiwan or Tuhu either. No morning sickness, no incontinence, no excruciating tearing pain. Thinking about it, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself in a daze. Miss. The maid Xiao Ju hurriedly ran in from outside the courtyard. I was still immersed in a sweet dream, still smiling, when I realized that the sky had already darkened. Xiao Ju gasped for breath. The young Marquis has come to break off the engagement." I was startled. What? By the time, the Marquis's residence must have just received the news of the engagement with the young lady, and the young Marquis rushed over without a moment's delay to break it off. "What's wrong?" Xiao Ju wiped her tears, stomping her feet in anger. That cursed Marquis's residence. Could it be that they looked down on the young lady for being a concubine's daughter? I had no time to comfort Xiao Ju, lifting my skirt and hurriedly walking toward the courtyard gate. Young Marquis Lu Chengyuan came alone. He stood outside the small, rarely used side door of the Shen residence. A jade-colored robe accentuated his tall, upright figure, making him look dashing and handsome. However, his face seemed slightly flushed, Shen Mingyu." He blushed and stepped forward, his expression somewhat unnatural. "Go and tell your father and mother to call off the engagement with me. Just say you look down on me, so that you and the Shen family can save face." Why, I grew anxious. The good days haven't even started yet. How can they suddenly come to an end? "Do you look down on me because I'm a child of a concubine?" "Of course not." He shook his head. "What does it matter whether one is legitimate or not? It's just..." His face flushed red, and he gritted his teeth. "I don't want to hide it from you. I can't just waste your entire life for no reason. The truth is, I can't." Looking at his expression, as if he were ready to face death, a sudden realization dawned on me. "You can't have children. Is that it?" He looked up in a daze. "How did you know?" And I had already excitedly grabbed his sleeve. "I'll marry you. I'll marry you. I'll marry you. I, Shen Mingyu, will marry no one but you." Hilarious. Looks like another reincarnated soul in my previous life. My legitimate sister and father cried and made a scene until she got her wish to marry Lu Chengyuan together with my stepmother. They betrothed me to a lowly city gate guard unexpectedly. After 10 years of marriage, my legitimate sister still couldn't conceive. She sought medical help everywhere and tried all sorts of folk remedies. In the end, it turned out that the one who couldn't have children wasn't herself, but Lu Chengyuan. She also discovered that the son born to the concubine she had forced upon Lu Chengyuan was not his biological child. Her legitimate sister, desperate for a son, would point at Lu Chengyuan every day, calling him useless, and even threatened to take her own life in the chambers of the Marquis of Yong'an and his wife, causing chaos throughout the entire Marquis residence. Everyone in the Marquis household felt indebted to her, serving her with delicacies and showering her with gold and jewels. With just a word from the eldest sister, the young Marquis bought her a mansion in the capital and fertile fields in the suburbs without even blinking. Yet, the eldest sister remained unsatisfied, clamoring day after day for a divorce. The Marquis's family had no choice but to agree to let her go. They allowed her to write the letter of divorce herself, promised to find her a good match in the future, and even offered her a substantial sum of money as compensation. However, the eldest sister could not bear to part with the Marquis's wealth and status. She went around the capital, spreading rumors that the Yong'an Marquis's family was unjust and intended to divorce her, turning the Marquis's household into the laughingstock of the entire city. The city guard I married, however, accidentally saved the life of the emperor, who was traveling incognito, and rose through the ranks, eventually being appointed as the great general of Northern Pacification. Not only that, but we also lived in perfect harmony, treating each other with the utmost respect, and were blessed with the most auspicious 5 sons and 2 daughters. Everyone in the capital said I was truly fortunate. Even the emperor wanted to share in the joy of the prosperous household of the general's residence, and specially bestowed the imperial plaque "May your descendants flourish," and granted me the title of second-rank Lady of Honor. My legitimate sister was both jealous and resentful, secretly putting red crown poison in my bowl on the day I was granted the title of a noble lady. When I opened my eyes again, we had both been reborn together. This time, she was going to marry the city guard and bear him 5 sons and 2 daughters. My legitimate sister laughed triumphantly. "Dear sister, in the future, I will be granted the title of a noble lady, while you won't even be able to lay an egg and will be mocked by the entire capital. I have no children to raise. My body is strong and healthy. I am wealthy and carefree, with immense power. My in-laws are open-minded. My husband is handsome. What does it matter if I'm mocked by the entire capital? That is what I deserve. As for that broken plaque of prosperity and descendants and the title of second-rank lady, if she wants it, then give it to her, but I wonder if she can bear the price behind it." I smiled. A month later, my legitimate elder sister and I got married on the same day. The procession from the Marquis mansion, with its red bridal sedan and carriages, blocked several streets. They beat gongs and drums all the way, scattering silver notes, drawing the entire capital to watch the ceremony. My legitimate sister was quietly married off to Qinyi, a low-ranking city guard, in a small 4-person sedan chair. Even though my stepmother had prepared a generous dowry for my legitimate sister, it couldn't even compare to the pocket money the Marquis's family gave me. Just before we parted, I heard my legitimate sister mutter resentfully under her breath. When he married me back then, the Marquis's family didn't make such a grand spectacle. So what if the fanfare is grand? In the end, she's still a hen that can't lay eggs. Under the red bridal veil, the corners of my lips curled high. The wedding banquet at the Marquis estate was grandly arranged, with nobles and dignitaries, music and dance, lasting until late into the night. A fair, slender hand with distinct knuckles gently lifted my veil. In the gentle glow of the red candles filling the room, I saw Lu Chengyuan's face, clear-spirited and elegantly boned, with sharp brows and bright eyes. He was drunk, his dark, moist eyes looking at me before lowering again. Do you truly not despise me? I stared blankly at the young Marquis before me. Dressed in a bright red wedding robe, his face slightly flushed and the corners of his eyes tinged with red, I thought to myself, isn't it, dear sister, you're having it this good? Lu Chengyuan is not only incredibly handsome, but he also clearly has a great figure. My gaze drifted downward. The wedding robe was loose, but a thin belt at the waist was enough to outline his strong, narrow waist and this collarbone, these broad shoulders, these long, slender legs and, most importantly, the young Marquis. He can't have children. This means I no longer have to fear marital duties or find ways to avoid my husband, who is as fierce and sweaty as a wolf. No longer do I have to secretly consume ineffective folk remedies like musk and mercury to harm my body, nor do I have to endure 10 pregnancies in 10 years, either being pregnant or constantly on the path to pregnancy. Perhaps noticing my silence, Lu Chengyuan said dejectedly, if you regret it, we can postpone tonight. I wrapped my arms around his neck and said, stop the nonsense. Give it to me now. 3 months later, I returned to my parents' home at the same time as my legitimate elder sister. Lu Chengyuan bought me a small horse from the western regions, and I happily rode it all the way back to my parents' home. He rode a tall horse, staying close by my side to protect me, and watched me with a smile. Once you get used to riding, I'll buy you a Fergana horse. I've just bought a new horse farm in the outskirts of the capital. Once spring arrives, I'll organize a gathering, and you can invite your girlfriends to play polo. I turned my head and smiled at him. Thank you, my dear husband. My elder sister, however, was carried into the Shun residence in a small sedan chair, steadily supported by 2 elderly women. She sat in the master's chair, gently stroking her belly with a smile. The doctor said it's been over 2 months already. As I ate the roasted lamb, I couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, truly worthy of Qin Yi, married for only 3 months. And the child is already over 2 months along. Such efficiency. My elder sister sighed softly. It's just that we can't tell the gender yet. She looked at me with a smile. I wonder, after being married for so long, if there's any movement in your belly, sister. I wiped the oil from the corner of my mouth and quickly waved my hand. Oh, I don't have such luck. My elder sister smiled triumphantly. My stepmother also couldn't contain her joy. Our Mingzhu is truly blessed, she urged her elder sister. Quick, have some grilled lamb to nourish yourself, and this plum blossom cake, you've loved it since you were little. The elder sister shook her head. Grilled lamb is too greasy. The sight of it makes me nauseous. I can't eat the plum blossom cake either. The doctor said sweets can harm the fetus. TSK. In the end, the elder sister only ate some plain boiled chicken and simple side dishes. After the meal, she vomited everything out as I passed by my pale-faced, bruised-eyed elder sister. I saw my good brother-in-law Qin Yi looking at her with disdain. Other women can still wash clothes and cook when they're pregnant with big bellies, but you're just too delicate. My elder sister's eyes reddened. I'm vomiting so much that even stomach acid is coming up, and you don't even feel sorry for me. Qin Yi sneered. What's there to feel sorry about? You keep asking for this and that. All the family's savings have been spent on your pregnancy. Why don't you ever think about how hard it is for me to earn my pay in the military camp? My elder sister's eyes grew even redder. I drifted by and sighed. Oh, come on, you two. Stop fighting already. Off to ride the little horse in April. The horse ranch is lush with green grass. Lu Chengyuan indeed bought me a red Akeltique horse and had the ranch completely refurbished. I invited a few close friends from the capital and noble ladies with close ties to the Marquis's household for a spring outing and a game of polo. Drums beat rhythmically, and skirts flutter in the wind. The match ended, and Sister Liu and I narrowly won by 1 point, taking the top spot. Sister Liu rested the mallet on her shoulder and laughed triumphantly. Young Qingtang, you should practice more before challenging us again. Qingtang pouted angrily. Sister Liu, don't get too proud, I'll surpass you and Sister Shen sooner or later. This made all the sisters burst into laughter. Sister Chen smiled as she handed over a handkerchief. You mischievous ones, quickly wipe your sweat, be careful not to catch a cold. Someone else laughed and said, Sister Mingyu, why didn't your elder sister come? You've invited so many distinguished ladies, and isn't she always the one who loves to join in such lively gatherings the most? Sister Qingtang was tying up her hair bun. Why invite her? I dislike her the most. Sister Liu shook her head with a smile. I'm afraid even if you call her this time, she won't come. I heard she's at home protecting her pregnancy, taking it extremely seriously, afraid of the slightest bump or injury. Qingtang widened her eyes. Then why did I hear that she went to the archery range to shoot arrows the other day, and even went hunting in the wild forest? Everyone shook their heads, not knowing why, but I knew. She had been diagnosed with a female fetus and was hastily practicing archery, hunting pheasants, riding stallions, and watching tigers and leopards. If you want to give birth to a boy, you can change the fetus from female to male before birth. There have always been such rumors circulating. In the first few months of pregnancy, when the embryo is not fully developed, it is possible to change the gender of the fetus through certain methods. In my previous life, I was forced to ride a stallion, shoot a male deer, and drink water infused with burnt bowstrings while suffering from morning sickness. As a result, naturally, it was impossible to turn a girl into a boy. Qin Yi and his mother, Lady Wang, were displeased, saying it was because I lacked the fortune. So even with such a remarkable secret technique, I still couldn't produce a son. I never expected that before Qin Yi even had to pressure her, my elder sister would willingly take the bitter medicine to change the fetus's gender. Well then, let's see if she has the fortune to successfully change the gender. 5 months later, the legitimate elder sister gave birth as expected. It was a daughter. Just after finishing her postpartum confinement, she returned to her maternal home. She threw the table full of dishes prepared by her legitimate mother all over the floor. What, turning a girl into a boy? It's all a lie. My poor mother-in-law dares to give me a dirty look. Turning her head and seeing me just entering with chrysanthemum wine, she composed her expression. She smiled politely and said, but then again, girls have their own advantages. Although not as good as boys, they're still better than not being able to have any at all. You agree, don't you, Sister Mingyu? I nodded hurriedly. Sister is right. Sister has just finished her postpartum confinement, so I'm afraid you can't drink Rongji's chrysanthemum wine. I'll just have to drink it by myself then. Everyone in the capital knows about Rongji's chrysanthemum wine, rich and sweet. Its aroma is intoxicating. Unfortunately, only a dozen or so jars are produced each year, which in the past were exclusively supplied to the Imperial Palace. This year, I mentioned my craving, and Lu Chengyuan specially went to ask the Emperor for a jar. I took a small sip and couldn't help but exclaim, how fragrant. My elder sister looked at the chrysanthemum wine, her expression changing slightly, but after a moment, she calmly smoothed her hair as if nothing had happened. She said to the matriarch with a loud laugh, everyone says that giving birth is like passing through the gates of hell, but I had a very easy time with this pregnancy. I only vomited a few times. It just goes to show that it's all exaggerated. So what if this child isn't a boy? If I just have a few more, won't I get one eventually? She glanced at me. As long as you can bear children, why worry about not having a future full of sons and daughters? I nodded heavily. Yes, you're absolutely right, sister. But I laughed inside. She is still young, having just given birth to one, so naturally she doesn't feel the hardship of pregnancy and recovers quickly. What about after that? I smiled and took a sip of wine. I was even more curious than my elder sister about how she would live that good life with children running around. Half a month later, my elder sister was pregnant again. Another month passed, and she deliberately sent someone to summon me. This time, she was carrying a male child. The Qin family was naturally overjoyed, treating the legitimate sister's pregnancy as a precious treasure to protect. Every half-month, the legitimate sister would insist on returning to her maiden home with me, proudly flaunting her belly in front of me. With nothing to do in winter, the changes in her were more entertaining than storybooks, and I gladly accepted the invitations. At 2 months pregnant, my elder sister began experiencing morning sickness and developed heavy dark circles under her eyes. At 3 months pregnant, some spots appeared on my elder sister's fair face. At 5 months pregnant, my elder sister's nose grew a size larger, and her skin gradually became rough. At 8 months pregnant, my elder sister started experiencing swelling and back pain. She secretly asked our mother to hire a female physician to help her with constipation issues. Later on, the legitimate elder sister, finding it difficult to move around, quietly stayed at the Qin family to rest during her pregnancy. This time, the various symptoms of her pregnancy were much more pronounced compared to her first one. Before giving birth, she returned to her parents' home with her large belly, intending to deliver the baby there. Mother, this time I don't want to give birth in that dirty shed again. The saying women are unclean reflects a belief held by both commoners and nobility that childbirth was considered impure, and therefore women were not allowed to give birth inside their living quarters. Wealthy families were willing to build better equipped birthing rooms. Ordinary people, however, would simply set up a makeshift thatched shed outside the courtyard as a temporary space for childbirth and postpartum recovery. Given Qin Yi's current family circumstances, he could only afford to build such a crude thatched shed. My elder sister was crying with genuine emotion, but our mother frowned. Mingzhu, if a woman gives birth in her parents' home, it will bring bloodshed and misfortune to her family. Your younger brother is still young. My elder sister was stunned. She hadn't expected her usually doting mother to refuse her this time, but before she could react, her mother-in-law, Madame Wang, had already arrived to take her home. Our Qin family's grandson, how can he be born in someone else's house? If you give birth to a daughter and secretly swap her for a boy, wouldn't we be raising someone else's son? Hurry up and come home with me. My elder sister gritted her teeth as she was dragged back home by Madame Wang. While my stepmother wiped away tears but did not stop them, I heard she went into labor as soon as she got home, and sure enough, it was a son. Still holding on to her anger, she had a difficult labor, lasting a full 5 or 6 hours. It still took place in the simple, makeshift thatched shed behind the house. Exhausted and drained, she opened her eyes intending to vent her anger at her mother-in-law, but suddenly, a piece of great news arrived. Her husband Qin Yi, who hadn't shown his face at home for 2 months, had actually been promoted, and he was promoted several levels at once. It was around this time in her previous life as well. Qin Yi had sneaked out of the city in the middle of the night and happened to save the emperor, who was traveling incognito and had fallen into the water. As a result, he was promoted several levels at once, going directly from an unknown city gate guard to a rank 8 deputy military officer. The Qin family is blessed with double happiness, a newborn son and Qin Yi's promotion. Mrs. Wang held her grandson, beaming with joy. My son is truly capable, both in fathering a son and in advancing his career. Daughter-in-law, you marrying into our Qin family is truly a blessing from our ancestors. My elder sister argued a few times but was scolded by Qin Yi for being unfilial to her mother-in-law. She had no choice but to swallow her grievances and discontent, focusing all her efforts on organizing the Qin family's celebration banquet. The Qin family had no savings, and the eldest sister wanted a grand celebration, so she had no choice but to grit her teeth and use her own dowry. Qin Yi initially criticized her for being wasteful, but when he realized she was using her dowry, he happily embraced her, calling her a virtuous wife, and coaxed the eldest sister into spending even more of her dowry to help him navigate the official circles. On the day of the wedding feast, the Qin family's narrow courtyard was filled with several tables of relatives and friends, yet the eldest sister, who had funded and organized everything, had to stay in a makeshift shed, recovering from childbirth and nursing her baby. It's hard to say for whom this double celebration truly brought joy. She deliberately called me into the thatched shed where she was in confinement, As soon as I entered the stuffy shed, I was hit by a strong smell, a mix of vinegar, the scent of blood, and the stench of sweat, but my elder sister seemed oblivious. Beaming with pride like a victorious rooster, "Sister, you may be smiling, but you must be seething with envy inside, aren't you? I laugh because I'm jealous that you emptied your dowry to pave the way for a man's future. Jealous that you gave birth to a second child before even recovering from your first postpartum confinement. Jealous that at just 17, you already have sagging breasts, a widened pelvis, and a belly full of stretch marks." I held my breath, covered my nose, and crawled out of the thatched shed. "This smell is far worse than my family's daily cleaned and scented outhouse. If I stayed any longer, I would have thrown up before leaving." I overheard my legitimate sister arguing with our legitimate mother. "The last batch of scented ointment didn't work at all, the spots haven't faded one bit, and the stretch marks on my belly have become even more unsightly. Mother, you must go find me some good medicine again. I can't stand being this ugly." "But, my dear legitimate sister, it seems you still don't know the changes in appearance are the least of all the pains of pregnancy." Returning to the Marquis Manor, I first called for a bucket of hot water to bathe in the sweltering heat of summer. Just sitting in the thatched shed for a little while made me feel quite smelly. When I called for the maid to bring a towel with my hair still wet, instead of the maid, Lu Chengyuan came in, my old face flushed red, and I ducked back into the bathtub. "Husband, don't tease me." He smiled and stepped forward, gently drying my long hair with a cloth towel. "We've been sleeping under the same blanket for 2 years now. Why are you still shy?" I angrily splashed water at him, but he caught my wrist. Only then did I notice a faint trace of sadness in his eyes. "Husband, what's wrong?" He lowered his gaze. "I heard you went to the Qin family's wedding banquet today. Do you regret marrying a sterile man like me?" "Oh, so that's what this is about." I smiled and lifted his chin. "Chengyuan, would you like to see how I look right now? After 2 years of marriage, my hair has grown longer. My body has become stronger, and I've become much more lively and cheerful. Whenever I meet my girlfriends, they all say my skin is fair with a rosy glow, and my complexion is countless times better than before. They even ask me for the recipe of the Marquis's fragrant cream, but it's not because of any fancy fragrant cream, it's because my life now, without pregnancy or childbirth, is truly extremely comfortable. People always deceive us women, saying that carrying on the family line and having many children brings blessings. They also threaten us with sticks, claiming that pregnancy and childbirth are women's natural duties, and that women who do not bear children are incomplete and sinful. But no one ever tells women how difficult pregnancy is, how dangerous childbirth can be, and how painful and terrifying the after effects are. It seems to me that this is nothing but a scam, luring us women in, only to destroy us. By the time the woman realized it, it was already too late. There was no pill of regret to take. "Chengyuan, as a man, you will never understand a woman's suffering, but I understand it, and in this lifetime, I have made up my mind to escape this cage." "Chengyuan, it wasn't you who made me unable to bear children, it was my own choice to walk this path. You don't have to blame yourself, and you shouldn't call yourself useless." "Chengyuan, if I had to choose again, I would still choose to marry you. Before, it was because I knew you couldn't have children, but now, it's not just because of that anymore." In the hazy mist, a glimmer of light gradually appeared in his eyes. "Then, what else is it because of? Naturally, it's because now I have also come to love you. Without you, my current happiness would be diminished by a few degrees." His eyes reddened as he buried his head in the crook of my neck. "Since I married you, it's only natural that I should give you the most comfortable and happiest life. It's just that there are many idle rumors in the capital, and I'm afraid they might hurt you. I have been married for 2 years and still haven't conceived, and there are indeed some rumors circulating in the capital especially. At this recent wedding banquet, some women secretly compared me to my elder sister, mocking me for being unable to bear children. But what does it matter if people gossip a little? Everyone in the capital, men and women alike, even the exalted emperor, is subject to a bit of gossip now and then, so I didn't take it to heart at all. I comforted softly. "I don't care." A muffled voice came from beside my ear. I care. A few days later, I took Little Orange and traveled north by carriage. The capital is scorching hot, and I've heard that the north is quite cool. I can't resist the urge to go and see for myself. Lu Chengyuan initially had some reservations. After all, the northerners are known for their fierce and unyielding nature, and he couldn't accompany me due to his official duties, but he couldn't stop me from insisting on going, so he had no choice but to send his most capable guards to protect me along the way. He also arranged a carriage and packed many of my daily necessities and travel funds before I left. Some rumors began to circulate in the capital. They say the reason the new bride of Yong'an Marquis Manor hasn't conceived is not because she is infertile, but because the young Marquis has a hidden ailment in this world. A man's infertility is even more embarrassing and humiliating, as few men are willing to admit such issues. Usually, the blame is unjustly placed on the woman. Now, everyone has started quietly mocking Lu Chengyuan again, and no one pays attention to me anymore. I sighed, knowing full well that Lu Chengyuan himself had leaked this information. He feared that I would be ridiculed and blamed by the world for this, so he did not hesitate to expose his own scars. In my heart, there was a faint, bittersweet sweetness. He didn't have to do this, yet he still did. When I arrived in Lianqing, I realized he had even arranged and prepared the mansion and servants, waiting only for me to move in. On the desk lay a letter he had sent by carrier pigeon. Your joy is my blessing. Enjoy yourself to the fullest and return home soon. I carefully and tenderly tucked this letter into my pouch. I spent the entire summer and autumn in the cool city of Lianqing, reluctant to return home. Every day, Xiaoju and I roamed around having fun, made some friends, and sampled all the local snacks. Qing Tang sent a letter every 3 days. I rubbed my forehead, thinking this would surely exhaust the Yang family's carrier pigeons. In her letter, she vividly described all sorts of fresh gossip from the capital to me. My elder sister became pregnant again right after finishing her postpartum confinement, but she didn't manage to keep it, miscarrying when it was 2 months old, and then she got pregnant again soon after, only to lose that one as well. Qin Yi handled several important tasks for the emperor and earned his favor, getting promoted once again. The legitimate elder sister grew anxious and summoned both imperial physicians and sorcerers to induce pregnancy. Finally conceiving once more, it was said that this time it was another male child, and the Qin family was overjoyed, guarding her as if she were the apple of their eye. Moreover, the Qin family had now become a prominent and respectable household, and they began to emphasize prenatal education. I couldn't help but click my tongue in disapproval. 2 miscarriages in a row, another pregnancy, and even more terrifying, prenatal education. Someone even more exhausted than the Yang family's carrier pigeons has appeared. Before the arrival of winter in Lianqing, Xiaoju and I set off back to the capital. We traveled while playing, stopping at interesting places for 10 days or half a month before moving on. It took nearly half a year before we finally returned to the capital. Interesting trinkets from Lianqing, local snacks, and gifts from the girls before we parted filled half a carriage. Lu Chengyuan, who had taken half a day off to welcome me outside the city gate, pursed his lips and said, "I thought you were never coming back." I grinned and tugged at his sleeve. "Don't be angry, haven't I been writing to you all along?" His expression softened as he pulled me into his arms. "Next time, I will definitely go with you." Just half a day after returning to the capital, I heard that my elder sister was already 6 months pregnant. Her mother-in-law, Lady Wang, was boasting all over the capital, saying she had set the strictest prenatal education rules for my sister, ensuring she would give birth to the smartest and most capable grandson. Wealthy families, in order to have a good son, would practice strict prenatal education. Pregnant women were required not to sleep on their sides, not to sit on the edge, not to stand on one foot, and not to eat improper foods. They were not to eat improperly cut food, not to sit on improperly arranged mats, not to look at improper sights, and not to listen to lewd sounds. They also had to regulate their minds, harmonize their emotions, restrain their desires, refrain from scolding even when angry, maintain a focused mind and righteous thoughts, and often listen to scriptures. Only in this way can a boy with upright character and exceptional talent be born. That is to say, the eldest sister must not sleep on her side, must not sit in a slanted posture, must not stand without being upright, must not eat food that is not cut squarely, must not sit on a mat that does not conform to etiquette, must not look at lewd scenes, must not listen to music that violates propriety. She must also regulate her temperament, strictly control all desires, and even when angry, must not curse others, while maintaining a pure and upright mind. Among these, the most terrifying aspect is not the restrictions on words and actions, but the principle of though angry, do not curse, and maintain a proper state of mind. This means that no matter what grievances the legitimate sister suffers, she can only swallow them, and she must not harbor resentment in her heart. Failing to adhere to any of the above points will affect the development of the fetus. Therefore, if any problems arise during childbirth or in the future growth of the fetus, it will all be the mother's fault. After returning from Lianqing, Qingtang and I went to visit Sister Liu, who had been bedridden with illness for many days. She had married into a respectable family, and her husband had just achieved the third highest rank in the imperial examinations. When we arrived, Sister Liu was half lying on the bed, emaciated and looking utterly haggard. After stepping inside, Sister Qingtang stood frozen for a long moment before she began to cry. Sister Liu, it's only been a little over a month since we last met. How did you fall so gravely ill? Sister Liu struggled to lift her hand, smiling as she wiped away her tears. Dear sister, don't cry, let me rest for a few days, and then I'll play a game of polo with you. A maid nearby, wiping her own tears, whispered to us that after Sister Liu gave birth to a pair of twins, she had to both care for the children and manage the household chores. Her body was completely drained, and it was no longer suitable for her to bear more children. She sought a contraceptive prescription and took some mercury as directed by the formula. Little did she expect her health to deteriorate further, and now she has developed a condition of continuous bleeding, which has persisted for several months. Holding Sister Liu's emaciated hand, I was so heartbroken that I couldn't utter a single word. I only regret not having advised her more back then, and now I hate my own helplessness. What's the use of persuading her again in this world? Which woman can decide her own marriage and childbirth? She forced herself to comfort me, saying, Sister Mingyu, don't cry either. I've taken all the medicine and supplements you sent, and I'll get better soon. I nodded, tears falling with a plop. Not long after, Sister Liu was gone. She never recovered and could no longer play polo with us. Qingtang and I went to pay our respects, placing a colorful polo ball in front of her grave and sprinkling some chrysanthemum wine she loved to drink. After returning home, I began making arrangements to open a medicine shop in the capital, specializing in the development and sale of contraceptive drugs for women. Currently, there are no reliable contraceptive methods available for women. Women seeking contraception either consume musk and mercury, soak in ice water, or use a rolling pin to press on their abdomen to force an abortion. These methods have been widely circulated for a long time, but they are largely ineffective and can cause significant harm to women's health. Often, women become deaf, paralyzed, or even lose their lives as a result. People would rather spend exorbitant amounts on developing elusive elixirs of immortality than open their eyes to the suffering of women who, unable to prevent pregnancy, are forced to endure the pains of frequent childbirth and the dangers of abortion. I've come to realize that if women still cannot make decisions about their own marriages, then shouldn't they at least be able to decide whether to have children or how many to have? Contraceptive pills in the pharmacy will be sold at the lowest price and regularly given to impoverished women. I want all women in this world to have the right to choose whether or not to bear children. But my dear Sister Liu, she will never return. On the day the pharmacy opened, my legitimate sister's child happened to be 1 month old. They did not hold a full month celebration, because the legitimate eldest sister gave birth to a child with a bluish-black complexion. Lady Wang was furious and pointed at the weak, exhausted legitimate eldest sister, who had just given birth, and scolded her directly. I told you not to be greedy. What filthy things have you been sneaking behind our backs to eat? Was it because you saw something filthy when you went back to your parents' home a few days ago? She then hugged Qin Yi and cried, the good wife you married must have resented me during her pregnancy. Her heart is so malicious that she gave birth to such a monster, neither human nor ghost, such a vicious woman. Sooner or later, she will poison your mother." Qin Yi immediately flew into a rage, pointing at his son and cursing his legitimate sister. "You poisonous woman, all of this is your crime." He dismissed most of the servants who were attending to his legitimate sister during her postpartum confinement, ordered the servants to lock her in her room, and forbade her from leaving until she had properly reflected on her sins. "Don't even think about going back to your family to complain. You gave birth to a freak because of your wrongdoing. Even the Shun family would be too ashamed to stand up for you." He then turned around and married a concubine, becoming as sweet as honey with her. His legitimate sister was locked in her room, forced to listen day after day as Qin Yi and the concubine flirted and teased each other in the courtyard. She had just given birth, was criticized and blamed again, and was confined here without even being able to properly rest during her postpartum period. On top of that, the physical toll from her previous 2 childbirths and 2 miscarriages had not yet been fully recovered. How could she possibly endure such humiliation? One late night, upon hearing the commotion from Qin Yi and his concubine in the next room, she fainted from sheer anger. Then she fell seriously ill. The Qin family, fearing that the Shun family would not let it go if something really happened, lifted her house arrest and hired a doctor from outside to help her recuperate. Only then did she manage to survive. Her stepmother and father had always favored their legitimate daughter and flew into a rage at Qin Yi. Her father pointed at Qin Yi's nose and scolded, "Don't think that just because you're in favor now, you can bully my daughter. Our Shun family has served as officials for generations. How many officials in the court have received favors from our Shun family? If we really tear up all pretenses, I'm afraid you'll have to shed a layer of skin too." Qin Yi repeatedly knelt and apologized, saying that the unusual appearance of this child had frightened him into behaving abnormally. Once the topic shifted to this child, father and the legal mother had nothing more to say and slightly cooled their anger. Qin Yi then regretfully promised to treat his legal sister well, and only then did father and the legal mother turn and leave in a huff. After that, Qin Yi distanced himself from the concubine and coaxed his legitimate wife with gentle words. Naturally, the legitimate wife became arrogant once again. She even boasted shamelessly, "As long as my father and mother are protecting me, Qin Yi can only grovel before me." She also bullied the out-of-favor concubine every day, saying, "She's just a concubine. If I'm in a good mood, I might give her some food. If I'm not, I'll beat her until she's crippled and sell her off. After all, my husband was only interested in her for a moment, a momentary whim." My elder sister smiled triumphantly, completely unaware of Qin Yi's sinister and hateful gaze as she bullied the concubine. Spring passed and autumn came, and in the blink of an eye, 5 years had gone by. During these 5 years, my medicine shop had opened its 6th branch in the capital. Since I couldn't foresee the future, I feared implicating the Marquis's estate and Lu Chengyuan, so I temporarily concealed my identity and hired someone else to manage all the affairs of the medicine shop on my behalf. I sought out renowned physicians from both inside and outside the capital, and even offered high rewards for effective contraceptive remedies from the common people. I brought them back to the medicine shop to test their efficacy and side effects one by one. In less than a year, I successfully developed a contraceptive formula that was not only effective but also caused minimal harm to women's bodies. So you see, there is a way. It's just that this world doesn't care about the suffering of women. When the prescription first hit the market, it faced a lot of ridicule and skepticism. There was even a drunk man who came to smash the shop sign, shouting that it was a wicked art that harmed the nation and its people, inciting women to be unfilial and disloyal. All of them were sent away by Lu Chengyuan's men. I paid no mind to any of this, focusing solely on developing more effective and harmless prescriptions, then expanding the shops beyond the capital. Over these 5 years, my elder sister, with great difficulty, gave premature birth to a daughter. Then, after a difficult labor, she gave birth to a pair of twin boys. During this period, she miscarried several times, nearly losing her life, but she didn't care, because she was only one boy away from achieving that ridiculous goal of 5 sons and 2 daughters. And as she gave birth to child after child, Qin Yi just as she had hoped, was promoted to the rank of Grand General. She gloated triumphantly. "Sister, my husband has now been promoted, and I will soon be honored with a noble title as well, and you, running around all day without knowing what you're busy with, could it be that you regret it and are seeking medical help everywhere to have a child? Haha, when I receive the high honor of a noble title, you, and all the women in the capital, will have to bow your heads to me. It's useless for you to regret it. This good life is all mine." I looked at her sunken, dark eye sockets, her gradually thinning hairline, and her dry, sallow cheeks, all at just 25 years old, as well as fingers that occasionally stiffen and cannot bend, and a slightly limping leg when walking, nodding with a faint smile. "On good days, I will send you off." She hasn't realized it yet. Qin Yi is now a highly ranked general. The Shun family could no longer protect her. A few days later, I sat by the window on the second floor of the medicine shop. After reading for a while, I grew drowsy in the afternoon and practiced calligraphy by tracing a copybook in the distance. I spotted a figure wearing a thick hood, limping along. I recognized at a glance that it was my elder sister. She was lying on the soft couch used for consultations on the second floor of the pharmacy, separated from me by an embroidered screen. "Doctor, I've heard that your clinic is the best at treating women's health issues. Please examine me. It's been over 2 years since my last childbirth, so why haven't I been able to conceive again?" The female doctor carefully took her pulse and examined her body, then shook her head repeatedly. "Madam, your body is too weak and deficient. It is not suitable for you to conceive again. It would be better to first take some contraceptive and nourishing herbs. Regulating your health is the top priority." But before she could finish speaking, her elder sister interrupted her. "What do you know? Just this one child, and I'll have the auspicious combination of 5 sons and 2 daughters. Don't give me that nonsense. Just hurry up and prescribe me a fertility formula." The female doctor refused, knowing full well that this would harm the patient and go against her medical principles. My elder sister struggled for a long time before suddenly bursting into tears. "You're all bullying me. My damned husband refuses to touch me. His heart only belongs to that concubine of his. He even despises me, saying I'm now ugly and old, and down there is all worn out, loose like a sack. Even my own children have been turned against me by my mother-in-law and that Yun Yang. Isn't your women's health clinic supposed to treat women's childbirth issues? Hurry up and prescribe me some medicine so I can conceive another child. I'm just 1 child away from having 5 sons and 2 daughters. Then I can surpass my half-sister and enjoy eternal happiness." Yun Yang was the favored concubine that Qin Yi had taken in the past few years. Out of consideration for the Shun family, Qin Yi had publicly distanced himself from her for a while, watching helplessly as his legitimate wife tormented her day after day. Now that he holds immense power, what does the Shun family even matter? So he once again lavished his favor on her, even avenging her by frequently humiliating and tormenting the legitimate sister. Now, the entire general's manor follows the wind and sees Yun Yang as the true master. The legitimate sister's life is getting harder and harder. The reason for this is that Yun Yang is actually a distant niece of Lady Wang and grew up with Qin Yi as childhood sweethearts, sharing mutual affection. It was only because of the Shun family that he had delayed marrying her and bringing her into the household. Back then, Qin Yi slipped out of the city in the middle of the night and incidentally saved the drowning emperor. Did my elder sister never suspect what Qin Yi was doing outside the city when he didn't return home at night? He was secretly meeting Yun Yang. Every time my legitimate elder sister was pregnant, he would use military affairs as an excuse and not return home for months. He was off fooling around at Yun Yang's place. It wasn't until the very end of my previous life that I found out about this. Back then, Qin Yi held Yun Yang in his arms and mocked me, who was suffering from postpartum complications. It was only because of my secret rendezvous with Yun Yang that I saved the emperor's life and now enjoy such good days. Yun Yang is truly my lucky star. Shen Mingyu, you are now old, ugly, and foul-smelling, not even half as good as my Yun Yang. Thinking of this, I clenched the brush in my hand with hatred. The female physician ultimately did not prescribe any fertility-inducing remedies for the legitimate sister. The legitimate sister cursed for a while, then sat by herself for a bit, Before leaving with a vacant stare before leaving, she glanced at me from behind the screen. "Who is over there?" the female doctor said. "She is the owner of our Huefu Hall." "What is she doing?" "Our owner is reading and writing." My elder sister stared blankly, her voice unusually desolate. "Before I was married, I also enjoyed sitting by the window like this to read." The female doctor comforted her. "You still can now." "Now," the elder sister lowered her gaze. "My eyesight is failing, my hands often cramp, my bones ache all day long, and I can no longer sit for long." The female doctor fell silent. My elder sister slowly and limping descended the stairs. I watched her alone, gradually limping away into the distance. It was as if I saw my past self, and a myriad of emotions surged in my heart, calling the female doctor. "Aang, how is that patient's health?" "She is afflicted with numerous ailments. She suffers from chronic hair loss, abdominal stretch marks, stomach issues, hemorrhoids, mastitis, dizziness, and urinary incontinence. She had a difficult labor with her last child, and postpartum anxiety triggered a mild stroke. Now she is both qi and blood deficient, and has recently developed epilepsy and bone pain. The lower body is severely torn and cannot be recovered. Even the slightest movement will cause pain." Aang shook her head. "If you take good care of it, although it will be painful, you can still hold on for a few more years. But if you still hope to conceive and give birth again, I'm afraid you won't have many years left to live." I responded with a faint I continued to lower my head and practice calligraphy. "Go rest, Aang." Aang had just missed one more point. After all these years of pregnancy, fetal repositioning, prenatal education, childbirth, the trials from her mother-in-law, and the disdain and betrayal from her husband, as well as various physical changes and ailments, her mental state has also been affected. Looking at her just now, one moment angry, the next sorrowful, then dazed, I'm afraid she, like me in my previous life, has also developed depression. Depression, invisible and intangible, torments people the most painfully. The birthing formula that the Huefu Hall did not give to the legitimate sister, she obtained from elsewhere along with some knockout drugs, because Qinyi had long been unwilling to touch her. Another 3 years passed, and the legitimate sister finally got her wish and conceived a male child. But this boy was even weaker than the twin boys from her previous pregnancy, and his cries were very faint when he was born. He was barely clinging to life, sustained only by medicinal brews. Nevertheless, the legitimate sister had finally achieved her goal of 5 sons and 2 daughters, 7 children in a row, just as in her previous life. The emperor learned of this news and praised Qinyi for his good fortune, bestowing upon him the imperial plaque, "May you have numerous descendants." He also praised his legitimate sister as a model for women across the land, granting her the title of second-rank lady, and called upon all women to learn from her. His legitimate sister received the imperial edict on her sickbed, too weak to rise and give thanks, yet her face was filled with a joyful smile, and on her withered, sallow cheeks trembled tears of triumphant happiness. This time, without her having to worry, Qinyi went all out to prepare the wedding banquet. The plaque inscribed with "May you have many descendants" was hung right in the center of the general's mansion gate, flaunting to all visitors that it was personally written by His Majesty. The entire courtyard was filled with joy and flattery, all congratulating General Qin. My elder sister, heavily made up to conceal her withered appearance, forced herself to sit beside Qinyi. Qinyi was beaming with health and vigor. On his other side, the young and graceful Yunyang stood, while behind him, the lively and mischievous children played noisily. Only the legitimate eldest sister, like a made-up mummy dug out of an ancient grave, stood out discordantly amidst the surrounding jubilation. Her hair had fallen out, her teeth had fallen out, her entire face sagged downward, and her eyes were as dull as the color of earth. The entire courtyard was glorious and festive because of her, yet it seemed to have the least to do with her. I guessed that the legitimate eldest sister must have wanted to see me the most at that moment, so I took the initiative to walk over. When my elder sister saw me, her dull and lifeless eyes lit up, and she tried hard to straighten her back, but in the end, she couldn't manage it. "Sister, I am now a second-rank titled lady, my husband is a great general, and my children have all grown up and achieved great things. Everyone in the capital envies me. But you, in your whole life, you have no children, no descendants. Are you jealous of me?" She couldn't form complete sentences. After just a few words, she had to stop and gasp for breath several times. I just looked at her calmly, as if watching a dying insect. This is the ending I have long known. I hate how she bullied me in every way since we were young. I hate how in my previous life, she and my legal mother arranged for me to marry Qinyi. I hate how she poisoned me in the end, hastening my death. But when the great revenge was truly achieved, for some reason, besides the satisfaction, there was also a sense of desolation in my heart. She laughed, revealing her missing teeth. You can't speak, you're jealous of me." At that moment, her son and daughter came running over. They bypassed her and ran straight into my arms. The little girl looked up at me and asked, "You are Aunt Shin, aren't you? Auntie looks so young and beautiful, and you smell so nice too." The little girl wrinkled her nose and said, "Not like mother, who is ugly and old, and always smells like urine, like a beggar on the street." "Anian, how could you say that about me? I am, your own mother." The eldest sister's hand trembled with emotion as she tried to reach for Anian, but she ultimately lacked the strength. The little boy pushed her hard. "Everything Anian said is true. Grandmother and Aunt Yun said the same. None of us like a mother like you," father said. "From now on, only treat Aunt Yun as mother." Then, pulling the little girl, he ran off laughing into the distance. My legitimate sister slumped weakly in the chair, her withered face blank and filled with resentment. I looked at her indifferently. "Eldest sister, my husband has been appointed as the Grand General, 5 sons and 2 daughters, the plaque and the imperial edict bestowed by His Majesty, the envy of the entire capital. Now you have it all. But, dear sister, would you like to lower your head and see what you have lost? And do these things you think you've gained truly belong to you? Have they truly brought you benefits? Can they even begin to compare to 1/10,000th of what you've sacrificed over the years? The title and salary of the Grand General belong to Qin Yi. The imperial plaque inscribed with belongs to the Qin residents. 5 boys and 2 girls were all raised by Lady Wang and Yun Yang, and they deeply despised their legitimate elder sister. The second-rank honorary title was indeed conferred upon the legitimate elder sister herself, but the glory went to the Qin residents, and the protection benefited the children. It could not alleviate the suffering of the legitimate elder sister's illness, nor could it save her from her critical condition. However, it could provide her with a grand funeral in this lifetime. My elder sister, she gave her wealth, her temperament, her efforts, and her health. She almost gave her entire life in the end. She was blamed, despised, betrayed, her body weakened, her spirit broken, left alone and broken like willow catkins in the wind, all for the benefit of others. The courtyard was festooned with lanterns and decorations, yet not a single red lantern was truly lit for my legitimate sister. Looking back from afar, my legitimate sister remained in the same reclined posture as before. She sat there dazedly, unmoving. My legitimate sister died on a spring day when flowers were in full bloom. That year, she had just turned 27 before she died. She said she wanted to see me. I was helping out at the pharmacy, copying prescriptions, and calmly refused. I nodded. A malicious, resentful woman who hated me to the core. I knew exactly what she wanted most before she died. I am too happy with my life now to attend her banquet with hidden dangers, but I had the messenger take back a piece of paper for her. It was just an ordinary prescription, but she will understand when she sees it. The funeral of the legitimate eldest sister was held with great pomp and ceremony. Even for a second-rank titled lady, the ceremonial arrangements far exceeded her status. Qin Yi personally escorted her coffin, and the entire capital witnessed General Qin weeping uncontrollably for his beloved wife. Everyone praised General Qin for his deep affection and loyalty, and even the emperor issued a special decree of consolation and compensation. When a woman dies, she becomes a tool for their show. I watched coldly, feeling disgusted, and closed the window in revulsion. However, the day after my elder sister's funeral, I heard that Qin Yi, Lady Wang, and Yun Yang had all inexplicably fallen seriously ill. Within just a few days, their conditions worsened beyond cure, and they died one after another. Later, the weak boy that the legitimate eldest sister finally gave birth to also died young very quickly. The other children were all dispersed and raised by relatives of the Shun and Qin families. In just over a month, the plaque "May you have many descendants" still hung high. But the once glorious general's mansion had become an empty, eerie, and haunted house. There were many rumors in the capital. Some say General Qin had killed many people before, and those vengeful spirits came to claim his life. Others say General Qin was deeply devoted and loyal, unable to bear the thought of his wife following him in death. Only I know the real reason. That day, the prescription I gave to my elder sister was the one she had been taking daily ever since giving birth to her last child. It was Qin Yi himself who went to the Imperial Hospital to request it, and Lady Wang personally brewed it for her every day. Her elder sister thought that because she had been granted a noble title and had earned the imperial plaque for the Qin family, Qin Yi and Lady Wang had changed their minds, so she took it every day, never missing a single dose. But her health grew increasingly worse, because in that prescription, besides the excellent blood tonifying and qi-nourishing medicine prescribed by the imperial physician, Qin Yi had privately added a highly toxic ingredient, hulan. My elder sister took it 3 times a day, and in just over a month, her life was hanging by a thread. How do I know this? Because in my previous life, Qin Yi and Lady Wang did the same to me. My elder sister didn't know that long before she gave me that dose of red crown poison, my body was already filled with toxins, and I wouldn't have lasted more than a few days. Because Qin Yi and Lady Wang were already eager to legitimize Yun Yang and have the children rightfully raised under her care, I stood up and left. Moreover, a wife like me, old, ugly, and reeking of foul odors, was truly an embarrassment to General Qin. So even though he knew I was already dying, he couldn't resist hastening my death with poison. I copied the prescription that the imperial physician had given to Qin Yi and added the words hulan at the end. My elder sister understood as soon as she saw it, so, with her last breath, she poisoned Qin Yi, his mother, and Yun Yang. My elder sister wanted all 3 of them to be buried with her. After my legitimate elder sister died, my father, who had always favored her, was impeached by censors, had his private assets seized, and was demoted several ranks. Living in constant fear and anxiety, my stepmother, having lost her beloved daughter and faced with the family's misfortunes, has been bedridden for several days, with no cure in sight. I knew it was Lu Chengyuan helping me vent my anger. At this point, all my great grievances have been avenged. Spring is perfect for outings. In the years I've been in the capital, the Women's Welfare Clinic has long been running smoothly, diagnosing illnesses, providing treatments, developing new prescriptions, and regularly distributing contraceptive medications. The staff and doctors are well organized, so I, as the owner, no longer need to worry or exert effort. So I packed my bags again, ready to head south for a trip. Before leaving, I went to Sister Liu's grave and left some newly made contraceptives from the shop. If there is a next life, Sister Liu, please never take that deadly mercury again. It seems Sister Qingtang had just visited as well, with freshly placed pastries and a light green spring dress. Left here every spring, Sister Liu would add a new water green dress to her wardrobe. After witnessing Sister Liu's death, Sister Qingtang refused to eat in protest against marriage. Fortunately, the Yang family had only one daughter, so Uncle Yang and his wife compromised, leaving the decision to her. As she grew a few years older, she met someone she liked. After developing the contraceptive prescription, Hui Fu Tang hesitated for a while. She discovered that the prescription was truly effective for women and gradually lessened her fear of marriage and childbirth. 2 years ago, she married the person she loved, and after giving birth to only one daughter, she and her husband agreed not to have any more children. Now, she runs a women's school herself, working as a female teacher who educates and nurtures others. I left Sister Liu's place and went straight to her school. In class, she taught the knowledge and principles that everyone talks about. She also spoke truths that no one else would dare to mention. She said that for women, marriage and childbirth are both high-stakes gambles. She also clearly explained the costs of pregnancy and childbirth to the girls one by one. Her private school was highly controversial, but girls came in an endless stream to audit the classes, filling the entire courtyard. I listened outside the courtyard for a long time, reluctant to disturb her. I quietly left after setting down the hibiscus cakes I had brought for her. This time, I planned to travel south for a couple of years before returning, and along the way, I'll see if I can open a branch of the benevolent women's hall in the south at the dock. Lu Chengyuan shamelessly insisted on following. I'm not going to be this insignificant official anymore. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He referred to the position of Prime Minister, which he had painstakingly earned by topping the imperial exams and working diligently with official documents. As an insignificant official, I laughed and said, "What about all your political duties? I remember you saying your ideal was to establish a moral foundation for the world, to secure a livelihood for the people, to carry on the lost teachings of past sages, and to bring peace and prosperity for all future generations." He muttered, "Actually, it's only a 2-month break, and I'll take the chance to see how the new policies are being implemented in the South. I can only accompany you for 2 months, but don't get so caught up in having fun that you forget there's a husband in the capital who thinks of you and longs for you every day." I smiled and stroked his face, saying, "My dear husband, just set your mind at ease. Though the Brocade City is full of pleasures, it's better to return home early." He reluctantly pulled me into his embrace. The spring waters surged as we sailed southward, with blooming flowers lining the banks. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.